Give it a rest, Jody. Are you stupid, man? You ain't gonna stop Spawn, so get off it. The dude's some kind of freak.
You'll see what he can do. My concern ain't about him being in our alleys. I just wish he'd stop podcasting so much.
Welcome back to another episode of Spawnography Hellspawn. I'm your host, Pierce Leiden. They, them.
I'm George Marston. They, them, she, her.
Cool. And the road to 50.
We're certainly on it.
We're on it, and we're almost there.
The
we got two more issues.
Up.
Yeah.
Yep.
How you doing, George?
You know, as we always say, I'm hanging in there, making it work. Since the last time we recorded, which was only a couple days ago, not much has happened. But tonight I'm going to see the new Alien movie.
Hell yeah, I saw it yesterday in 4DX.
Oh, wow. I don't even know what the fuck that means. Does that mean they like sprayed shit on you and stuff?
So 4DX is only at Regal theaters. Wow. Basically, you like in groups of 4 seats, for whatever reason, you're basically in like a roller coaster seats, but there's no bar, and they move around, and which is kind of cool for space movies because they'll kind of like float you the way the camera's moving, which is kind of cool. So you'll sort of sway, and then if there's like gunfire like by your ears, there will be like air poof, 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 poof.
Oh wow.
And then in front of you, you'll get sprayed with water sometimes. It's pretty loud. There's a lot more like if there's some crack of light or something, the whole theater will sort of like crackle or whatever.
I feel like for me, that experience would be akin to, have you seen A Clockwork Orange?
Yeah.
You know, when they strap Alex into the like chair, open his eyes, and like they make him watch horrible shit. That's the reaction I'd have. I'd just be like, please stop, stop. I did. You know what? When I was about like maybe 13 years old, I went to Disney World and we went to the alien encounter thing, and it was basically like that.
Similar to that. Yeah.
Wow.
And also that one's kind of scary actually though.
It was fun.
It is pretty fun. Here's what I'll say. So I've only ever done 4DX for 2 other films, and they were for my birthday, and they were specifically films that I wasn't like excited about, but I needed to convince Vanessa to want to go to see Avatar: Way of Water.
Ugh.
And so we saw it in 4DX, and she was
drenched.
She was like, I hated that movie, but that was really fun. And so then the next year we saw Aquaman and the Kingdom of whatever the fuck that second one is called.
Again, just coming out dripping wet, like from one of those rides that takes you down a...
The joke now is that every one of my birthdays, we have to go see a movie in 4DX. It has to be a wet film.
A wet movie. Ugh.
A wet movie. And
I don't like that.
And then we were going to see Twisters in 4DX. My brother saw it in 4DX, and he was like, that ruled. It was so fun because it was so loud, and they jostle you around a lot. It's funny.
Man.
It's funny with an alien movie because like an alien movie is, it's a little scary, but Vanessa laughs a lot when the chairs start moving because it's like a ride. It really is like a ride. And so she's laughing because she's having fun, but like scary stuff is happening on screen. So it's a lot. It is a lot. I highly recommend it.
I'll tell you what I would want to see in 4DX. I just recently rewatched for the first time in many, many years and subsequently read the book, was 2001, A Space Odyssey. I think to properly see that one in 4DX, you have to be on mushrooms. because
have you read all of like the sequels to 2001: A Space Odyssey?
I did read the summaries because I was curious about whether I might want to read them or not, and I'm not the kind of person where a book is ruined by spoilers or whatever.
Yeah.
And they sound very strange, especially the one where part of the plot is that displaced white South African, like displaced colonizers, want to steal diamonds from space to ruin the diamond economy on Earth. That's
Yeah.
very strange. The first one to me was pretty perfect until maybe the last 1 or 2 pages, it kind of was like, okay, I liked the final lines or whatever, but it got a little more vague than I was hoping for compared to the rest of the book. The movie is sublime. It's very difficult to watch if you're trying to do anything but watch the movie.
Yeah,
But
you have to pay attention. I feel that way about most Kubrick, unless it's something I've seen 1,000 times. The Shining is a movie that I can just like throw on in the background because I've watched it so many times that I know where I'm at in the story if I
yeah,
pop out for a second or don't pay attention or whatever.
I try to do that with Kubrick movies, but I'm always drawn in to just sit and watch them because I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe it's basic, but he is probably my favorite pound for pound filmmaker just because watching a Kubrick movie feels like watching it for the first time every time I watch it.
There's a certain level of like incredible craft to all of them
Yeah.
that Blank Check, a favorite podcast of mine, did a Kubrick series. And so it's fun to dive back into all those movies. But it's funny because I didn't have to watch a bunch of them because I was like, oh, right. I just know these kind of backwards and forwards because
Right.
I've seen them 1,000
Right.
times. And it's because they stick with you. Everything about them kind of sticks with you in
Stanley
a way.
Kubrick's Spawn.
What would that even be? I don't even
It would
know.
honestly be a lot like this in that it would be long and drawn out. There's a quote from Stanley Kubrick about storytelling where he says, I'm paraphrasing here, it's something like he likes stories that the plot doesn't really become apparent until you're like kind of drawn in already. You kind of have to live with the characters and their world before you figure out how it's like being changed and everything.
Which is interesting because like I do think that we almost what movie did I just see where I was like, man, I wish we got it was Trap. I saw Trap a couple weeks ago, the M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Oh.
And I said that movie starts with Josh Hartnett and his daughter going to the concert, and the basic setup is serial killer is going to get caught at a concert because for some reason the authorities know that he's going to be there.
Oh, okay.
Josh Hartnett is the serial killer. He's just trying to plan his way out. And I think it's a solid M. Night.
I'm not really a fan of any of M. Night Shyamalan's movies.
Any?
I mean, no, not really. I mean, The Sixth Sense is fine. I wouldn't consider myself a fan of it. I don't think it's a bad film. I think some of his movies are bad. I haven't seen.
Plenty are bad.
But there's a lot of them I haven't seen, so I'm not going to judge them all, but I'm just not a fan in general.
I think that you now have to go into his films with, like, The Sixth Sense, I think is a kind of perfectly crafted movie. Sure. And the story behind it is kind of interesting because he was told, like, he basically was like, I need to write a movie that they can't tell me I can't, like, that is, the screenplay is so good that somebody is begging me to make it, and that it is so good that I can negotiate being the one to direct it. And he kind of did.
Sure.
It's an interesting turn for Bruce Willis too, I think.
Yeah.
I really like Signs. I think Signs is really good. I think Unbreakable is really, really fun. I don't love Split and Glass, but I think Unbreakable is really, really fun. Especially the comic bookness of it all is really, really fun. But then that's the thing, is that I think Sixth Sense made people think like, oh, the twist is always coming. There's always a twist. There's always a twist. All movies have twists.
Yeah.
That's how storytelling works. But it kind of became like a ding on M. Night's reputation.
It became something of a an expectation for his movies that they
Right.
have that, and that has to be something as good as The Sixth Sense.
But
And it's
the fact though that if you go into his movies not expecting like again the Sixth Sense like made a shit ton of money, got a lot of Oscar play, was like this is the new guy. Whoa, no. Think of him as like just pumping out like Roger Corman movies. Dude's just making B movies where the log line is like the premise.
sure.
Old is what if there's a beach that made you old? That's what that movie is.
No, I know it. I know. Well, that's the thing. And I'm not even saying he's a bad filmmaker. I'm not saying any of that. I'm not saying any of those are bad films. I mean, some of the films he's made, I think, are objectively bad, but
Sure,
not
I
the
don't need
ones
to
that,
watch
not the
Lady in the
ones,
Water.
listeners, not the ones you like. But
If you like it, we
it's a
think
great
it's
film.
good too.
Yeah. I'm just not a fan of it. Like, I'm just, you know how sometimes you're just not a fan of things? Like, sure, I get it. I'm not begrudging it exists. It just isn't something I'm not the audience for it here, and that's
Yeah,
fine.
all new Star Wars things.
You know, and it's the same problem, which is that I think a lot of the time, for a long time, I held this against viewers of Star Wars. Now I'm holding it against Star Wars myself. It's been a long road for me, and I'm kind of just tired now. But I think there's this, okay, going back to 2001 in a way here. There's someone said, I can't remember who said it or where, but it's always stuck with me, and I always think about this. A lot of people talk about that first shot in Star Wars where the Death Star comes out and it just keeps going and going and going and going and going and go. Or not the Death Star. I'm sorry.
It's not a Death Star. It's
The
the
Imperial
Star
cruiser.
Destroyer.
Yeah, the Star
Yeah,
Destroyer.
yeah.
Sorry, the Star Destroyer. The Imperial Star Destroyer ship is coming out and just keeps going and going, which is a homage to the first shot of the Discovery in 2001 where it does the same thing but from the side. But anyway, everybody wants that moment again. Everybody who watches Star Wars wants to feel like the first time they saw Star Wars, and they hold it to that standard. And there are a lot of things that I liked about certain Star Wars movies where I was like, I hate these ones, love these ones, like these ones, okay with these ones. And now I'm just exhausted by the whole thing because it's certainly they're just gonna keep making them, and most of them are like not that interesting to me, so it's fine. I don't begrudge it. It's just I'm kind of worn down on it now, and it's that same thing where it's just like everybody expects something more from it.
I think you and I have had this discussion before, but and maybe on the show, but maybe not. Especially becoming a critic made me like listen. I was a diehard Star Wars fan for a long time when I was in high school, and also too when nerd stuff wasn't mainstream as much as it is now, where like I really had to like wear that badge. Like if I wanted to really like it, like that was my whole personality because like it was the thing I really cared about, and it probably I probably did get made fun of for it and whatever. And I think in a weird way, the weird fandoms that pop up around things, even though that they are like where they act persecuted, even though it's the biggest thing in the world, it was just so weird to me.
Yeah.
Is this like, okay, what do you want everybody to make fun of you for it again, or are you mad that your thing is everybody's thing now because your thing being everybody's thing is the thing you wanted? You wished that everybody liked the thing you liked, and now they do, and now you don't like it anyway.
Well, the problem is in a lot of ways, and I don't want to I'm not going to totally separate myself from this, but the problem is in a lot of ways that people wanted to feel cool for liking Star Wars and think other people thought they were cool for liking Star Wars. They didn't necessarily want everyone to like it because now it's not special. I'm not a gatekeeper like that about things. I think everybody should like anything they want in any way they want. I think
I don't
that's
care.
fine. I don't care. Like, it just doesn't matter to me. Unless you're being hurtful to someone else somehow, I don't care.
I've gotten to the point where I only engage with stuff that I reasonably want to have a conversation about.
Right.
And if I don't want to talk about it, then I would rather not know about it because I know myself and I know that I'm a yapper. And I know that I will have an opinion, and I will be annoyed by your opinion if I don't like it, or if I think it's interesting and I want to talk about it, right? And then I'll be
Right.
insufferable, and that's why we have a podcast.
Exactly, exactly. And there have been many, many hours spent between us and our friends doing exactly this off mic about many topics, just like, no, you're wrong. I hate that. Or yeah, you're exactly right. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things that in an insular community, like among friends, or it used to be for me, like you'd go down to the comic shop on a Wednesday afternoon and there'd be the same, like the Wednesday Warriors or whatever, the same group of folks, people that, whether they were your friends or not, they were people you were comfortable having those, like, oh no, I hate that, or oh yeah, I love that, or whatever, conversations about things and sharing things with each other. And a lot of that has certainly been lost with the anonymity of like that approach when you're doing it on the internet. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's still fun and valuable and exciting to have those conversations with people you trust, to know the line between like opinion, fact, and feelings about each other.
It's so funny that you say that. I was at Forbidden Planet right before seeing Alien Romulus, because whenever I go to the movies over there, whenever I'm in the city, I always stop by Forbidden Planet.
We were over there like a month ago.
Yeah, of all of the Manhattan comic book stores that are left, it's probably my favorite. I do like it over there. And I was just kind of looking at the new releases. I picked up, what did I pick up? Oh, I picked up like 4 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, and I picked up new Ninja Turtles.
Cool.
And issue 1 of Night Watcher.
Cool.
But some guy was in the aisle and he was like pointing out X-Men. It was Uncanny X-Men, that cover with the 3 hands, right? The first issue of Gale's Uncanny.
I like that cover.
And he was explaining it's fine. He was explaining to to the girl that he was with that he was like, oh yeah, like X-Men's really, it's complicated. Like there's a lot of books that come out. And then we just started talking about it. And and it was great. It was like, we just had a nice, like little, I was like, yeah, that's the only one that's readable though.
X Factor was really good.
I thought it was okay.
I loved it. Anyway,
I
see,
think,
and this is why we have a friendship, because we can have these different opinions.
I think that they did Fire Fist dirty again, and I know that that's the joke, but it was a mean joke.
Maybe he'll come back. We'll see.
Well, he does say that he wishes he wasn't he wasn't known in the text of the book. So
yeah,
Mark Russell. I'm hit or miss with Mark Russell on the whole. So
sure,
we'll see. We'll see. He's the right choice for the kind of book they're doing. The kind of book they're doing is it's
very satirical.
Yeah,
but dark satire, I would say.
A little ecstatic-y.
Yeah. Kind of taking that ball and running with it in a different kind of direction. I like that.
Does feel a little bit like that Al Ewing Thor issue.
A little bit. I thought that was pretty fun. I like that Uncanny X-Men cover where it's just all their hands in, because it reminds me of this ad for the 1991 Fleer X-Men cards, or not X-Men, Marvel Universe cards that used to be in comics on the back of Marvel Comics, where it was like all these different characters' hands in the middle holding different cards. And you had like Spider-Man, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes. And like that was a sick ad, and I just always thought that was like, oh man, that looks great.
I like that cover because it reminds me of the greatest hero of them all. Combo Man.
Ah, yes, Combo Man. Combo Man.
For young listeners, of which we probably have none, combos are a terrible junk food that is delicious.
Oh, they still sell them. It's like pretzels with cheese inside, or
fake. Definitely the fakest cheese. Fake. Oh, it's so cheese good. Flavored something.
If you're on a road trip and
they're perfect.
Oh, they're the best.
Pepperoni pizza with the pretzel outside.
Something like that, yeah. Well, it's now time to talk about 2 of the Spawn issues of all time.
Listeners, we are avoiding talking about these issues a little bit.
They're not
bad.
They're just not anything. They're going back.
Great either.
We've had 4 issues in a row two story arcs, you might say, or more, where they kind of avoided the like, and then, just like 2 pages of these guys, 2 pages of these guys kind of storytelling for the most part. And now they're making up for lost time with catching up everything that needed to be caught up before we finally get to issue 50. So we're going to look at 48 and 49 today. And in our next episode, we'll finally, along with Todd McFarlane and the rest of the Spawn creators, be at our destination. We'll finally be taking the off-ramp on the road to issue 50.
Yeah.
These issues feel like the off-ramp on the road to issue 50.
These issues feel like waiting in traffic.
Yeah.
That's what they feel like. To continue the driving metaphor, a thing that I cannot do.
God, remember before podcasts?
You just sit with 10 wins.
Yeah.
You give us 10 minutes. We'll give you the world.
Wow.
That was, I don't know if you have 10 wins down by you. 10 wins is just our AM news station, one of them in New York. Yeah. So you probably don't.
How about that?
Yeah. Anyway, listen, I'm going to get right into the credits on issue 48 so that we can get this ball rolling, this train moving, this
car back on the road.
There we go. We got there. Okay. So Image Comics presents Spawn number 48. This is May 1996, and we are there. The System, story by Todd McFarlane, pencils by Tony Daniel, inks by Kevin Conrad, copy editor and letters by Tom Orzechowski, color by Todd Broker and Roy Young, dedicated to Paul Levitz.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
Paul Levitz, longtime DC editor and writer, of course, very well known for his work on the Legion of Superheroes. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're going to open this one with Jason Wynn and his giant window.
Sort of. Because, okay, there's a whole thing here that starts with at 18 feet, the office ceilings are impressive. And we've seen Jason Wynn giving good window many times to start at the
giving good window.
Right? To open some of these issues. And now Homer Simpson voice here, it's pretty big, I guess, when you look at the window here. There was an opportunity to really show that scale. And this is Tony Daniel, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of whiffed on it.
He could have done a lot less work by drawing the window really big and Jason Wynn very small.
Well, and to show that 18-foot scale, I think that would have been the move. And again, I want to say one of the better issues from Tony Daniel yet, I think, personally. I think it's pretty good.
I agree. I also really like the cover before we get too far into the issue.
Great cover. Great cover. Spawn crouching with the bats all coming up behind him. His arms are crossed. I remember like that cover well.
The chains kind of echo the bat wings a little bit.
Yeah, they form the bat wings.
Pretty cool.
Green energy. Looks great. Great cover.
Good stuff.
Yep. And, again, we've talked at length in the last episode about the differences between Tony Daniel and Greg Capullo, the context of how we're viewing them. I won't go back into another diatribe about that, but I will say one of my favorite Tony Daniel issues yet here, despite the kind of plottiness of the plot, he does a good job for the most part with storytelling and his storytelling choices. Again, a few places it could have been polished, but I'm not going to hold the whole thing against him because I do like this issue.
Yeah, and so the narration is kind of getting us to the fact, and the dialogue also. He's on the phone. Just a laundry. The last caption is really all we needed to know, which is a laundry list of U.S. intelligence activities continues for another hour.
Well, there's actually setup here that's important. He says we've put the proper documents together. Someone on the phone says we've put the proper documents together along with deniably substantiated evidence. Everything ties into a cohesive presentation that should convince the recipients that it's all factual. We plan on making the drop later today. Now, two things are important about what they said there. One is it sounds like gobbledygook. It's basically if they were like the synergies are really coalescing in the different silos of our brand identities. But what they're saying there is we've doctored the files to make it look how you want it to look, and we've delivered them to people.
True.
And that is important because right after this scene, after we get the check-in with Jason Wynn, which also includes, check-ins on like Guatemala operations in France. If you want to know more, read The Devil's Chessboard.
Or, news reports from 1996, I guess, because it does feel like it was just like whatever was on the news.
Well, this is a time, actually, quick history aside, a lot of CIA documents were being declassified, I think, in this era. And we were learning a lot about the CIA's activities in South America and across the world in the preceding, 40 or 50 years.
Well, they've never done anything bad in South America, right?
Everybody just go ahead and look up School of the Americas, and I really do actually recommend you read the book The Devil's Chessboard, which is a history of the CIA and the Dulles brothers in particular, and a lot of the horrible things that the CIA did in order to maintain capitalism literally at any cost, including the cost of destroying the world. So really incredibly interesting stuff. It's not conspiracy shit. It is a historical analysis of actual documents and actual operations that is enlightening and shocking, to say the least. Anyway, we catch up with little nods to all that. Todd was definitely reading some of this stuff at the same time.
Well,
the early versions of
he
these
probably heard about it.
Told. Yeah.
He didn't
that's
read it.
Right. He doesn't read. He was listening to whatever the podcasts of the day were. AM radio again.
Yeah. 10-10 wins.
Right. So we get to the next scene is Sam and Twitch, and Sam is proudly showing off this dump of an office that he got, paid way too much for a corner office for them that has no view because of cigarette ads blocking the windows. Sam really loves it. He's so proud of it. And it really is just a shithole. There's like boxes and files everywhere. There's no rhyme or reason, no furniture. It's unfinished. There's cracks in the walls.
That said, less of a shithole than his apartment, which was like every time that he offered food to Twitch, it was like covered in cockroaches.
He will make it that way fast because soon we'll see the inside of the refrigerator. Later, we show the inside of the refrigerator that says he just got yesterday, and it's already full of like moldy garbage somehow. So it's just this. Sam is basically Pigpen from Peanuts.
Yeah, he's Pigpen and Fred Flintstone. He's like single. This is what I imagine single Fred Flintstone was like.
God, and we've talked again at length about how we feel about Sam and the cartoonishness of Sam's slovenly behavior and his nature. And it's still not exactly pleasing. I will say the back and forth between Sam loving their shithole of an office and Twitch being like, oh my fucking God, look at this place, is a funnier version of what we've seen of it than what we've seen of it in a long time, because at least it's not about some terrible quality of Sam's body or something.
Right. And
quote unquote terrible.
I think that Tony Daniel is okay at staging all of the slapstickiness of this. I think he's okay at it. There's just kind of stuff that doesn't line up between the script and the art. Like the huge cigarette billboards blocking 80% of our view. There are no cigarette billboards in sight, so it doesn't.
You have to assume
it's not really clear that either that line didn't translate to, or wasn't in the draft that Tony Daniel saw, or just they never changed it, or
something. There's a bit of a miscommunication.
There's something about these two issues that have that quality of like, what are these weird little missed details that don't really make sense? And it is that, and we'll get into this in the next issue where Todd does not ink at all. That you're like, oh, there's a focus being placed a little bit further down the line. Issue 50 is about to come out. It is double sized. Todd does draw one of the stories that you're like, attention is split, and it's adding up to sort of these
could have
issues.
Been quote unquote Marvel method situation.
Right. The other thing too is we know that Orzechowski tends to massage some dialogue.
There are some misspellings and some typos in these issues.
Agreed.
That could have been avoided. They're not the worst thing I've ever seen, and I'm not going to knock someone for having a typo once in a while. God knows I'm guilty. But the thing, and again, it's that Capullo of it all, that missing Capullo of it all. If Greg was doing these pages with the slapstick, you'd have little gags in the foreground.
Yeah.
Like happening, little things like that, little touches. There would just be a little more to it.
There's a little
And
more depth to Capullo's work at this point than there is to Daniel's.
yeah,
Daniel can get you where you need to go. Capullo can take the scenic route and still get you there in the same amount of time. Does that make sense?
yeah.
I don't know why we're doing a lot of like traveling metaphors today, but
Huh. Well, maybe it's because we're traveling in a couple weeks to see each other for our
that's
dear
true.
friend's wedding,
That's true.
and that'll be great. But while Sam is showing off the office to Twitch, no sooner is Twitch basically like trying to judiciously say like, "Wow, you've really picked a shithole, but I guess we'll make it work," than a packet of what else but files slides under the door.
We're back,
And
baby.
when I saw this, I immediately knew, of course, that it was what the people on the phone were reporting to Jason Wynn. These are doctored files that Jason Wynn has sent out, presumably to manipulate Spawn as per Clown's orders, and we'll get more suggestion of that later. But also, it seems to take some revenge against the people who sold him out, because what he does is he sends evidence against all those people in a sort of different conspiracy that unimplicates him somehow to Sam and Twitch again. And it also says to set up a meeting. They want to set up a meeting with Sam and Twitch, whoever anonymously is delivering these files.
I know that they mentioned Doctor in the Files literally 2 pages before this, but like, I think that for the reader, there's some, hey, if you weren't paying attention, maybe you're thinking it's Spawn doing this again.
Well, and also because that language was a little bit like vis-a-vis, quote unquote, thereunto, like
Yeah.
businessy language. But I picked up on it because I'm a master linguist. Um, so the other thing we get from this is that Jason Wynn is now looping Spawn into the conspiracy.
Right. Which is our big
So
clue that it is not Spawn giving the file, because there is a picture of Spawn.
included. Speaking of Spawn, we catch up with some of the night people all gathered around a fire. They're kind of talking to Bobby and Bootsy, kind of razzing them about
They're
Spawn,
back. Thank
saying
God.
he's saying that Spawn is back. We'll get a little explanation why we haven't seen them. Spawn is back in the alleys, but he's distancing himself from everyone. Even Bobby and Bootsy are like, yeah, we're not trying to go over where he is. We discussed that last time. Rat City, as they call it, is like a dank place that only the twisted will fear to dwell. And like that doesn't include the general population of these
Right.
folks who they're living in the alleys. Spawn's living in the deepest part of the alleys, which this is a labyrinth of like, I don't know where Todd thinks this is, but like it's very like Gangs of New York kind of. And when we see the Spawn movie, we'll see that Rat City is like a lattice work of like makeshift. It's basically like a shanty town behind the city of New York somehow.
Hey, listen, if JD Vance is to be believed, we're on the road back to Gangs in New York.
There are people who sincerely, I think, you call them like they're afraid of cities, and they sincerely think that like New York City is a war zone where like it's like the Warriors or something, and people are just like fighting in the streets, and it's definitely mostly not like that.
Yeah, 100%. And that's because it was like that for a while.
It's not like that. But yeah, but like 50 years ago, literally at this point.
Literally 50 years ago. I mean, another great book to read that I highly recommend is The Bronx is Burning, which is covers a lot of the late 70s, like New York City politics.
I have to put that on my list.
Son of Sam killings.
Summer of Sam, great film.
Great movie.
Spike Lee, great filmmaker.
True. That's who should make a Spawn movie.
Oh, dude. Spike Lee's Spawn would be bananas. I don't know if it would be watchable, but it would certainly be viewable. I would. That'd be amazing. Do the Right Thing, one of the greatest movies of all time.
I'm going to see King Spawn in 4DX.
Oh, hell yeah. They'll have like fabric whipping us in the face for the cape. Oh, when King Spawn comes out in 8 years, we'll finally be catching up to where the Spawn title is.
We'll be caught up to where Spawn is.
We will do a King Spawn episode where I come up to Rat City and view it with you. That will happen. We will. When that comes out, we'll roll the movie into existence. Yeah, we'll be in the front row calling it out like Crow and Tom Servo.
Oh boy.
But we
Oh, I
will.
probably will also see The Crow in 4DX.
Oh boy, I bet that's going to be really great. I'm
The
sure they'll
Crow and
waste the
Spawn.
money.
The Crow is a Spawn, and Spawn
The
is
Crow is a Spawn.
a The Crow.
Sincerely, let us write the Crow Spawn crossover. There are at least 40 people who are listening to this podcast who will probably read it.
Sincerely, also let us write the Crow Spawn movie soundtrack.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. You know what? We'll talk about that off mic. So yeah, we get checking back in with Bobby and Bootsy here. Sorry. Uh, they're telling the others that they haven't talked to Spawn because he's like being creepy off in the back alleys. And they, toast to Bobby and Bootsy whipping boys to Al, the King of Blood, which is like, oh, that's what we're calling him
All
now?
right.
That's dope. That's God from hell would be jealous. So back in Rat City, we see Spawn's chains bashing everything apart. We see Spawn carrying stuff. I think this image in particular was on the cover of used in one of the wizard issues that I have
Yeah.
of Spawn.
It has enough negative space that you could put a lot of words on it.
Yeah, we get those same kind of murky blue purple word boxes. It's okay. If they wanted to be different, they could be more. I don't know. They just kind of blend into the purpleness of the background. Also, the buildings in Rat City are fucking covered with lightning because it's just in the back there.
Yeah, it's weird. There's like alleys and no city structure. So it's like, wait, what are we? Where are we? What are we looking at?
You
It's
know,
fine.
they talk about how Malbol just sent him to this place on purpose. I kind of have headcanoned a little bit that this is sort of a mystical place where, like, the closer you get to Spawn, the less the boundaries of reality matter, and the closer you get to hell. And we'll get some evidence for that later in this arc, too.
There is a thing about New York, though, where in certain areas that are kind of like more run down,
Yeah,
these places do exist, and they are kind of larger open spaces because there's no building. There are no buildings.
right.
There are, or like, but like the Lower East Side, like the Bowery, is like packed full of buildings.
Yeah.
So it's rare that you'd get any sort of space.
So that's why I think sometimes I'm starting to think that I don't know if this is my head canon or what, but what I'm putting into it a little bit, and again, there'll be a little bit of evidence to suggest this later. What I'm putting into it is that Spawn is kind of turning Rat City into hell. And the closer you get to him, the deeper you get into these alleys, the less reality seems to make sense. Cog shows up and warns him about the costume.
I
And
like the hand
Spawn's
in the
like,
foreground here. I think that
yeah,
that's like a thing that's been missing from Tony Daniel that we're used to now from.
not a lot of hand stuff. Tony
Yeah.
Daniel doesn't do a lot of hand stuff. Certainly not at the
He
level of
doesn't do
Todd
the
McFarlane.
greatest hand job, but like, at least not as good a hand job as Capullo or Todd.
But he's in there pulling it off. And this panel in particular works really well. He's got like the grip is funny, and also like
I like this cog a lot.
yeah, this cog in the alley. It
Really, really
kind of
good.
hits that archetype of like the stranger coming in from the shadows. And Cog says, you're purposely building your own prison. And that's kind of what's happening. He even grabs Cog. He is keyed up here, Al Simmons / Spawn / the costume, after his sort of team up with Tremor, which ended in him sort of betraying Tremor and
Yeah, he was such a
blasting
dick.
Tremor's brother apart and leaving Tremor for, wounded. He was a huge dick. And he's kind of being a dick to Cog here too. And he's just like, look, I'm sick and tired of you popping up, preaching your mysteries. If you have something to say, then say it. And Cog's kind of been saying, you have to get your shit together and get control of your costume for a while now.
Yeah, he's been a little bit. Here's one thing I'll say in defense of Cog is that when we first met him, he would be like, "There's stuff you don't know about and stuff you need to learn." And Spawn was like, "It would be cool if you told me what that was." And Cog was like, "You need to find out for yourself." And then Cog was straight up just like, "Bro, figure it out with your costume. It's taking you over. You shouldn't let it. That's pretty bad." And
Yeah.
Spawn was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And now he's like, tell me what you're talking about. And he's like, I've been telling you, you're just not listening, which is another thing that Cog told him to do
Now, here's the thing.
an issue ago.
You're very right about all that. And Spawn's not listening to Cog and not trying to take control of his costume. We'll find out later that his costume has some kind of hell virus. And that.
Which,
Now, here's what I was going to say about that. Yeah, it seems like just adding something on, but it starts to mimic what's going on with Terry Fitzgerald too, which is going to come up next in the story, which is that Terry, I've been saying he has COVID, but I think it turns out he's got like a brain tumor or cancer or whatever. And
yeah, we'll find out in issue 50.
We find out in issue 50 that something serious is going on with Terry, and it's starting to get worse and worse. And Wanda keeps telling him to go take care of himself, go to the doctor, take care of himself. And he's putting it off in this drive to get all the evidence he needs that Jason Wynn tried to have him killed.
Yeah, in this issue, he passes out for a few minutes, and that's when he realizes that.
Remember when that was happening to Al, and it's still kind of happening? There's a kind of a parallel being drawn between them literally that I think works in these issues. It's one of the things that does work, I think, across these two issues, is that there's a lot of work done to sort of draw a lot of parallels between the different sides of the story we're seeing. It's just that the checking in is kind of getting a little tedious.
And I think also, too, we've checked in before and we couldn't draw those parallels because, like, the hell virus thing wasn't a thing. Previously, It was not that the costume was sick. Previously, it was that the costume is built to do this way.
Well, and it's advancing too fast. They keep saying that. Well, now we know that apparently the reason is it has a hell virus.
It feels like a weird sort of, I thought of this too late. I can line it up. It doesn't feel. Here's where it feels like an inexperienced writer who is writing a little bit out of their depth.
Well, and that's also the other possibility in a way, is that it was intended to be read that way with what's going on with Al and what's going on with Terry, because the stuff with Terry has been there, and they've been saying that something's going on with Al's costume for a while, but the parallel hasn't been drawn as explicitly, so it wasn't jumping out to us in quite the same way. So, either way, it kind of chalks up to there's a level of inexperience in the craft that goes into the reveal. The reveal kind of works in retrospect, though, because of the stuff with Terry. And Al tells Cog to leave him alone. He says, if you have something to say, then say it. Get out of here. Otherwise, get out of here. He says, why are you doing this? And Al says, I'm too easy a target. Tremor, overkill, the curse. Everyone seems to know where to find me. Well, not anymore. From now on, funny. I don't exist. Yeah, it is. And he says, from now on, I don't exist. And I like Cog's line. He says, yes, you do. You're the only one who won't accept that.
Spawn and Cog frequently have the dynamic of letting an 8-year-old throw a tantrum. I don't know if you ever did this or your sibling ever did, where they were like, I'm running away.
Oh, yeah. It's the classic kid thing. You put all your comic books in your backpack and you walk out the front door and you walk to like the end of the block, which is the farthest you've been without your mom holding your hand.
Yeah.
And then you just wait there for like however long. And then you realize your mom is watching you, but she's not going to come get you. And you start to think that she's going to let you go. So you have to go home.
Spawn's like locking himself in his room, and he's like, from now on, I don't exist. And Cog's
exactly.
Like, yeah, okay.
This is what you do when you're a teenager. From now on, I don't exist in this house. I just exist in this room, okay? And then it's pizza night, and then you're coming out, and then you forget that you don't exist, and then you're like, shit. Well, but what happens for Spawn is he turns Cog away, as he did to Tremor, as he's been doing to Boots and everybody. We check in with Wanda. She's having trouble with her finances again. It's the same thing.
Just more files bullshit.
More files bullshit. Yep. Which is again being manipulated by Jason Wynn. We know that. Speaking of which, back at CIA headquarters, Terry Fitzgerald is looking in. He's like, he finds the silver bullet that he needed to prove that Wynn is the connection between everybody. Now, here's the thing. I am also pretty sure that this is Jason Wynn manipulating this too, because we know that he's been manipulating everybody else. And then he has this kind of dangerous run-in with Terry where he's like, I can't wait to see the files you've been putting together, Terry, and what they implicate about whatever it is you're investigating, hopefully Spawn, right? And Terry's like, yes, of course, I'll show you as soon as it's ready. But then he blacks out. He wakes up in his office, cleans up, doesn't do anything, goes home to Wanda and resolves to get the doctor to look at it, I guess. But it says for him, it's already too late. It's been saying that for a while. It's been kind of edging at that for a while. This is not a new reveal that Terry, that something bigger is going on with him. Yeah. That's been clear for some time.
Meanwhile, Sam and Twitch got trapped in an elevator at their terrible new office building.
Sam is smoking a cigarette in the closed elevator, which seems like a great idea. I know that you're not going to necessarily suffocate, but like you don't want to run through all your oxygen there.
Yeah.
Sam and Twitch mostly finally gets the door open. Twitch says he'll phone the superintendent tomorrow. If it's not fixed in 2 days, he'll take off a month's rent. Don't you wish it worked that way? Don't you wish it was like, if my toilet doesn't flush in 2 days, I'm not going to pay you next month?
I mean, my last apartment, I didn't pay rent for like 2 months.
Well, hell yeah.
Because they were overcharging us for rent. So I said,
well, fuck them.
We've already paid you then. So enjoy.
Landlord
literally didn't say shit. Was just like, well, then I'm not re-upping your lease at the price that you want it. So
let's lunch the landlord.
Yeah.
As Dead Kennedys once sort of said, and I won't get us demonetized.
So
not that we make any money on this, won't get this silenced.
I don't
know what the fuck I mean. You know what?
There's one funny gag. I mean, this is again where Tony Daniel just doesn't do the sort of Sam and Twitch gags as quite as well as Capullo and McFarlane do. We are kind of getting back to Sam just eating randomly. But
yeah, this is where we see
he's sitting on the fragile refrigerator. Box, and we see the nasty refrigerator. It's not that bad though.
No, it's just full of overflowing,
sort of. But it doesn't have any bugs.
But also we learn that Sam and Twitch have basically run through almost all their cash. But Sam has a little surprise in store. We get back to Spawn. We also learn that their meeting with the mystery person who delivered the files is in 2 days.
Right.
We get back to Spawn. I'm pretty sure I could pull out the Wizard magazine. I think it's a Spawn special that has this image of Spawn in it with him like holding aloft the worms again. They're worms. And they are now specialized worms that have basically been cultivated to take people's sin and give it to Spawn. He is basically devouring these worms through his costume and through his flesh, and it's re-empowering him.
Yeah, there's some fun stuff in the narration here. They are the worms, the carriers, god creatures evolved, now specialized to absorb the sins of the living and transfer them to the undead. So are these Jesus worms?
Oh boy. The Jesus worm sounds like some shit from Dune.
I don't the optics of, though he fights it, Al Simmons is a slave to this new ritual.
There's a lot of little bits of language in these 2 issues that I don't love, but I'm going to not try to ding it because it's not necessarily.
It's not meant the way that if anybody wants to get up in arms about.
It's not meant that way. It doesn't read great. There are a couple instances of that. Kind of a common thing in comics from the 90s. And unless it's something where, like, when Clown in the last issue or whatever called that guy a word that on its own isn't terrible, but in the context I consider a slur, will not repeat.
Sure.
Like, kind of comes off that way.
It's one of
those drawing rules.
The drawing rules. It's one of those things where having your letterer just be the editor because they interact with the text the most.
It's a proofreader.
Right. That's why copy editor is the credit, I think.
Right.
Because it's not like now where there is a Spawn editor.
Right. Someone who's like, no. And I mean, they're flying by the seat of their pants. This is very DIY.
Yeah.
It's like not having someone master your album because you're in a punk band and you just had it mixed and you don't even know what
George,
that
I
is.
still don't know what mastering is.
I'll explain it off mic.
Great. This image does rule.
I love the worms all in the foreground. One of Tony Daniel's best spawns, I think. One of the
his
coolest
arms
versions of
are
the worm yet.
huge.
Hell yeah, they are, man. He looks like the ultimate fucking warrior.
His arms are gigantic. The worms are in the
Yeah.
foreground. It rules. It's
His
all great.
this under whatever the underside of your shoulder muscle there.
This right
that's
here, right?
massive for
it's
him.
not your
That-
traps, because this is your
No.
traps.
And then his little tiny waist. This is cool.
Yeah.
This is cool 90s comic art. I love it. Honestly, I do. It's one of my favorite Tony Daniel spawns so far.
Hell yeah.
And it says the ceremony will conclude in another few minutes. We'll see what that means. But before then, he kind of jumps into the outer part of the alley and snatches Bobby. And he kind of terrifies him, even though he doesn't mean to. He kind of clutches him like he's about to interrogate him. But instead he says, I need a favor. Something's happening to me and I can't stop it, so I have to disappear for a while. I don't know how long. I need you to tell the others I've left. But I'll still be around. You're the only one who needs to know that. He basically says, I'm leaving. I'm going to hide for a while in the same exact place I've always been. But you can't come near me, and you have to pretend I'm somewhere else, and you have to tell all the others I'm gone because I don't want to hurt you and I can't control what's happening. You've gotten too many strays off my bullshit, and I can't tell you where I am, but just you got to protect me by pretending I'm gone. And he's basically like, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, fine.
Then we get 6 panels of sound effects, basically, and I guess spawn building. We get the power meter.
Yep. I guess it took a lot of work for building.
I guess. And but kind of nothing after that. We just get Jason Wynn and Clown.
Yeah. So this page, it kind of mirrors the last page, mirrors the first page.
Which is
with Jason
nice.
at his
It's
window.
like poetry, it rhymes.
And yeah, it's fine. And it also is the ending of the check-in. It's the follow-up to what we saw at the beginning, where whoever it is that's doctoring and planting these files for Jason Wynn is telling him it's all done. Everybody's doing exactly what they need to do. They all have the files they're supposed to have. The files say what they're supposed to say, and I think they're all falling into your web. And he says, great. All I need to bring about the demise of our two friends is right here. And they say, very good, sir. And then we see that the whole time Jason's been in his office manipulating these events, he's had Clown there pushing him.
Right.
Now, I like this bit because it's actually a pretty fun reveal. Clown has been showing up to fuck with Jason Wynn for a while. Last time it happened, Jason Wynn was like, look, I still don't know what you actually want or want me to do. I know you're dangerous, but I don't know. I can't take you seriously because I don't know what you want. And now Clown is like, okay, fine. We'll fucking start pushing Spawn together and I'll start actually manipulating you. We're seeing the actual manipulation. In the next issue, we'll follow up the Clown and it'll talk about how he has been like pushing Jason Wynn to his limits of his political manipulative abilities.
Yeah.
And it's like we're finally actually seeing that happen here.
Yeah.
Seeing him actually make him do things.
There's a few pages in issue 48 that I'm like, oh boy, we are really dragging this out. Like maybe so that Tony Daniels gets to draw a few more spawns or something. It is very decompressed for what it is, which plenty of Spawn is. I'm not trying to I know that that's just kind of the way Todd writes, but we are moving at even slower than a snail's pace to kind of build up these things, which is a little bit crazy considering that the next issue feels like a million fucking things have to happen to put things exactly where they need to be. And it feels like an editor could have gotten these 2 issues into one.
Yeah. But that's the problem, is then they would need an issue 49. So also, but like I said, these issues feel like the off ramp to Spawn number 50. Like you're on the highway, you're moving, and at least for the last few issues, it's felt like we're getting along at a decent clip. And here we hit traffic again. We have to make a lot of boring short-term moves just to get to our destination. It's really just pulling those threads, doing the housekeeping that has to be done to get us to the point where we can read Spawn 50.
Which brings us to
Spawn 49.
Spawn 49. Image Comics presents in May of 1996. Helter Skelter, story by Todd McFarlane, pencils by Greg Capullo, inks by Danny Miki, Copy editor and letters, Tom Orzechowski. Colors by Brian Haberlin and Dan Kemp. So it's been quite a bit since we've seen our original coloring team.
They might be gone. That might be it. So I think Brian Haberlin, I think, will stick around for some time, won't he?
Quite a while, yeah.
He'll also write Spawn at some point, won't he? Or am I just...
Different Brian.
Brian, okay. My bad.
In memory of Michiko Mitsuki Miki.
Okay.
So I have to imagine that is Danny Miki's...
a relative.
A relative of
mother.
Danny Miki. Yeah. I looked it up. You can't find anything about it. So sorry for your loss, Mr. Miki.
Yeah, absolutely. So right off the bat here, I can tell that this is Danny Miki inking and not Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Not a ding. It's just you can tell the different style. Danny Miki is a little busier. I think there's a little more like hatching in these tiles in Granny Blake's house, because we're opening with Spawn wearing an Image Comics hat, showing up at Granny Blake's house to talk to her and tell her that he's afraid that he can't stop what's happening to him and that it might be dangerous for her too. And she says, "Don't you dare say that to me. We all love you too much for you to totally abandon us. You have to cast aside these demons." And honestly, aside from the part that's the religious part, because I'm not a religious person at all, there are parts of this that really resonate with me, because there are things that I've been in times of crisis where I feel like I have to retreat from life and from the world, not to necessarily in the same way that Spawn has to keep people safe, but I feel that
that you built
it's part
that
of depression
cocoon of like metal and garbage in the alley behind your house. And
that was in my old house. I just moved out of there. Funny enough, that's kind of how my house was. It was almost like just a big long hallway that had rooms off of it. You were in there a couple times. True. You remember?
I just don't love the Grandma Blake stuff, because I get that it's one of the few human beings that Spawn can talk to, that Al can talk to, and she doesn't treat him like Spawn, right? Because she's blind, she treats him like Al. I'm with you. I don't care about the religious stuff, because it is kind of like whatever. I know that it kind of plays into the heaven and hell-ness of what Spawn is.
And it's also her viewpoint. It's just a religious way of talking.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate optics are that she kind of becomes like the wise old black lady that sends our hero in sort of the direction he needs to go. That's
fair. That's fair. That is a harmful trope.
We've brought it up a few times. It is what it is.
It does kind of happen here.
It just is what it is.
But I think it also does matter, though, that I think the reason she's put in that role is because she's a connection to his old life.
Yeah.
That isn't immediately preconditioned to shun him for who he now is.
Here's the thing. This character would be the same if Al and Wanda weren't black. This character would still be there. It would just be an old white grandma.
Right.
Because Todd's not thinking about that as like, oh, the optics of that trope are sort of like
people weren't exactly talking about that trope. At least not, I'm going to go ahead and say, not a lot of white people were talking about that trope at this time.
And it's going to pop up 3 years later in The Matrix 2. Not The Matrix 2, The Matrix also.
But it's a common trope that white people weren't, in my experience, really consciously trying to write against at that time.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and it's unfortunate. But what she's saying to him, though, ultimately, that you can't shut everybody out to make this go away. You have to deal with it, because it's only going to get worse the more you ignore the people you love and the more you fight against us. I think that does ring true, and it does make me feel like there's something that rings true about how that's being addressed as like kind of really a metaphor for depression and grief in a lot of ways.
It's interesting because Spawn's such a huge loner in this era, and he's so the opposite now.
Yeah.
Not entirely, but at least like there are definitely issues where he's more on his own. But in the current era of 2024, whenever you're listening to this, in the current era, like there's a Spawn team, there are multiple Spawns, there's a whole thing. Like it's much more. He works with Terry like Terry's his man in the chair, like all the
Yeah.
time, you know, like
So he's gotten through some of this bullshit, but you're seeing him trying to figure that out now.
yeah, for
I
sure.
think that's interesting. Speaking of Terry, we get a check in. The doctor's like, I don't see anything
This doctor
on.
visit, very similar to the Wanda doctor visit. I think it's laid out pretty much the same.
It also makes me wonder if Jason Wynn is manipulating the doctor because everybody's downplaying how bad it might be. It did make me feel like, okay, we can confirm here that like there is something about this where it is being played down to him who he is, or that these health problems are being played down to him. Hold on,
Yeah,
let me reset that for 1 second. A lot of people experience doctors downplaying their health symptoms to them because of who they are. Trans people, especially trans people who are
that's true.
well into medical transition. Black people, it's always been a thing where white doctors downplay the pain that black people feel. Same thing, women in general. Fat people have a struggle even trying to have any symptoms of their health taken seriously. And that's kind of how it feels here. So there's something about the doctor being very nonchalant, ringing true. Also, my doctor, I have a slight, I have a symptom of something that is not a big deal at all, but had any other symptoms arisen, could have been. And my doctor, who is Dutch, was just like, I suppose this is simply how you are existing in the world. This
Yeah,
is just
well,
the way
I
you
mean,
exist.
listen, I don't think it's a symptom of anything. You just care too much.
That's what it is. Well, I didn't want to say exactly what it was. It's not a big deal. I
No,
just don't
that's
want to talk
fine.
about my
How
personal
much you
medical
care.
history. Right. That's right. He said you have an
Your heart
overabundance of
grew 3
fucks.
sizes,
You are
and
giving too many fucks. And so I need to reduce your fucks.
the thing about it is that he keeps saying, the doctor says like, "Oh, it's a neurological condition. Like, don't worry about it. It's totally fine. We'll
Happens to everybody at some
some tests."
point.
As Terry walks out coughing, so
There's
we're
this like,
like, "Oh, okay,
that panel really great.
yeah, it's really
Love that
good."
panel. Love the ink splatter on that panel. I really think that works great, showing like there's something fucked up here with
I
Terry.
like the ink gradient on that panel.
Yeah, looks awesome.
So cool.
So good. And it works so effectively to communicate exactly like the creeping desolation of something coming for Terry here. And that he knows himself and that he understands he's sick, even if the doctors are not figuring it out or downplaying it.
When the coloring is better, or Zakowski's lettering gets better.
Yeah.
No shade to Todd Broker in the previous issue and in the other issues that he's done. It's not up to the standard that we're used to from Steve Oliff and Oli Optics. I will say that Brian Haberlin and Dan Kemp here definitely take the ball and run with it more from Oli Optics.
Right.
More where if I didn't know it was a
Greg
change.
Capullo also gives them more to work with in the backgrounds a lot of times, so there's not as much of the like smear of a gradient.
Yeah,
Not necessarily in this, not necessarily on these pages, but on the next page where we're back in the alley.
That's kind of what I was transitioning into. Is this next page? We have these sort of like thick, jagged, like veiny almost panel borders that are able to, the coloring team's able to be like, okay, we're going to take that and put that in purple. Now, purple doesn't need to be within the art itself. It can kind of be this like gray, orange. In a way, the word balloons are almost lighting the scene, which I think is a really cool effect.
It works great.
I feel like this keeps happening where we read a Tony Daniel issue and we're like, it's fine.
It's not his fault.
It's not his fault. I wonder what it would be like if the coloring team was switched up.
That's also true. I do like this page quite a bit. I like the script.
Too.
Here is where, to me, when I was reading this, it started to feel like a strong metaphor that for like anxiety and depression. And in a way that I think the text reflects cool. He's saying, what's happening? God damn it, what's happening to me? This madness. I thought I'd get away from it, not have it follow me, not to Rat City. I wanted to be safe, but I can't. I'll never be free now. Never. It's me. I'm the one. It lives in me, wanting to kill, to hurt everyone, which depression doesn't usually make you want to hurt other people or self-harm necessarily, but it can.
But since the
And
symbiote is also kind of in his, it's got to be in his head a little bit too, right? They are sort of feeding off each other.
And he's saying his costume was born in hell. I don't know how to fight that. It's too strong. I can't do it. Not anymore. I don't have anything left. So do your worst. There's something about this that really rings true to like a feeling of like absolute rock bottom. The script is nailing it. So I just think it's a little cliche, but it works.
You know what I really love? The lettering on the other dialogue and other captions is a lot more standard.
Mm-hmm.
And the dialogue and the lettering on Spawn's internal monologue here is a little bit more crazy, a little bit more italicized, a little bit more almost like
it's a little more jumbled and a little fractured.
Yeah,
like
and I just think it's really good. It's also even like the shape of the word balloons themselves, right? We're used to Spawn having different word balloons. That's nothing new.
But these are kind of different from what we've seen.
Right, and they're even different than what we saw with Granny Blake earlier. Where with Granny Blake, it's they're in line with everything that we're used to from the book. These are different, you know?
And here's where I also start to think some of my theory about like Spawn bringing a little bit of hell to Rat City and it becoming a little bit of a metaphysical place is where, you can see it'll be more visible later that Spawn has built this kind of cocoon of trash and shit. And inside it's very hellish. And Cog is saying he's built his own prison. He wouldn't do that. The costume's got some kind of infection, making it erratic. Al doesn't know how to read the symptoms, and if he doesn't stop it from spreading, there's a typo right there. It says symbiote, not symbiote. Will advance to Necro State 9 before it's ready for that level. And here's where Cog starts trying to tear his way in, and we see inside, it's not just junk. It's all this weird, like, hellish overgrowth, demonic, like, creepy stuff.
Very, we're talking about Alien, but very sort of Giger-esque.
Yeah, very much stuff. So. And Cog sees Al before we do. We won't see him yet, but Cog says, "My God, Al, no." Here's another couple of typos. We get despicable. That's spelled wrong.
Volatile.
Volatile. Those are the two. So
given the schedule of these issues again, and also the fact that there's only one set of eyes on this once the script gets submitted, right? And it's just Orzechowski he's got to pump him out. It happens. It's kind of crazy that it didn't get fixed, considering what like all the lettering that had to get fixed for Tony Twist and Vito Gravano for the reprints. But
yeah,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. And if they're deferring to having it be the wrong way that it was back at the time, then I'm fine with that. I do like this page. I love the top caption, "In another of the city's million shadows."
I think Todd's getting pretty good at that stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
That could have been eight captions in some issues of Spawn, and there is just one nice caption. And Clown is basically saying, Jason Wynn is so easy to manipulate. He's a sap. I can get him. He's evil, sure, but he doesn't have the will to be like truly evil. He is too easy to manipulate in his evil. It's too easy to just make him do what I want.
Which, you know what, if that was true, why didn't you do that so much sooner, Clown?
I think that's what he's supposed to have been doing, but it's only really become clear right now. He also figures out what's going on with Spawn's costume as he's eating a rat. I like him laying on his back laughing and then dropping the rat into his mouth, which is disgusting.
Poor rat.
Yeah. Here we get to Spawn. Spawn splayed out. We see what's going on inside Rat City. The costume is like basically creeping out. It's very David Cronenbergian, like
flesh worm,
body horror. The fly, like the end of the fly, where the Brundle fly is all mixed up with the technology and
great
shit.
Movie.
In some ways, perfect movie. In some ways, it looks like that. And Spawn's like kind of strung up by his own costume, much like Curse was once strung up in the alley by his cables and stuff.
Yep.
and we can tell that something's going on with the costume. It's kind of lashing out at Cog, trying to fight him. It swallows him up at one point while he's saying fight the pain. But inside, again, I really love Al's internal monologue here. He's saying, God, he was all I could think of then as the costume thrashed about, trying to spill my guts on the ground. It was God I thought of. Why would he create all this? Why would he want to? My anger at him was all I had left, the only distraction big enough for me to forget the pain. And he's like, God made Satan, Satan made hell, hell made Malbolgia, Malbolgia made this costume. So it's from him, from God, that all this evil comes. It's his fault. Want to say a couple of things about this narration. Again, you can say that it's a little cliche, but also I think it's really effective because anyone who has been invited into a relationship with Christianity and with the Christian version of God, be it willingly or be it through, like, when you're a kid, your parents take you into that. Anyone who has had that and then questioned it has had this thought of, like, why would God do this? Why
Yeah.
is this something God would do?
I think that
God made this, God made that, and therefore God made this happen. I think it rings true. I also think it rings true again for depression. I also think, again, canonically trans Al Simmons. Why has God made this flesh that I am trapped by? Why would he do that if all
right.
things are supposed to be perfect?
Why would he
And I
make me
am,
feel
quote
this
unquote,
way? If I
if
am
it's
made in
right.
God's image, then why am I this way?
And all the things that many of us have questioned through on so many different levels and layers, especially those of us who have relationships with religious people in our
You
lives.
know, I grew up. My parents are very extremely religious.
My dad and my stepmom also very, very religious.
And I grew up going to church and very indoctrinated is a strong word. I was a child and I was impressionable.
But I think that's still indoctrination. I
think in a way,
I don't think it's an intentional, like, I'm going to indoctrinate this
yeah.
child, but I think it's
I think
it's trying to raise someone a certain way. It's conditioning.
which on some level, listen, I don't know. I'm sure
I'm
that
not trying to say your parents tried to indoctrinate you into something
that's
harmful.
what that's why I'm trying to say, like, it's indoctrination is a more sinister word than I think. They're trying to instill certain values in me, and that those values are Christian values.
Right.
And, I think that the thing that leads a lot of people out of the church, whether it's a Christian church or like my parents, specifically a Protestant sect of Christianity, so not Catholicism, but any of it is, well, the whole thing is that we're supposed to care about other people. And then you get older and you're like, oh, great, I care about other people. That seems good. And then, and this is where sort of politics comes into play, but in the US specifically, where you go, well, hold on. This politician has some ideas that care about other people. This politician has no ideas that care about other people.
Right.
But they care about maybe like people that don't exist yet more than they care about people that do.
Right.
And you go, so wait, I'm all for the one that cares about other people. And you get told, no, that's absolutely wrong. You're supposed to only care about the people that care about us.
Right.
And it's so weird.
And you get a lot of, so I grew up a similar way. My dad and my stepmom are extremely religious, which was a big change for my dad. He went from being a not very religious person at all to being an extremely religious person when I was very young. And I kind of came at it from a point where they really wanted me to be very Christian, and I couldn't do it because I just had already had too many other ideas in my head that conflicted with it. Like, I already was reading about mythology and shit before I ever read anything from the Bible.
Yeah.
So, like, I couldn't help but make the comparison. Long story short, I was always being invited into this faith that was also then saying, but if you want to be part of us, you have to not do these many things that feel like values that are important to you, that don't feel harmful to other people. But,
I mean,
like,
my main thing was, as a kid, I would just be like, why I asked my dad. I remember asking my dad. I have these very specific memories of being like, I was like, all right, so like Jesus is important. And he was like, yes, you have to have a relationship with Jesus, then you get to go to heaven. I said, okay, got it. So you used to be Catholic. And he was like, right. But then now I have a relationship with Jesus. And I was like, okay, great. Our whole family's Catholic. Are they going to hell? And he goes, not if they have a relationship with Jesus. I said, but you left that because you don't, right? Like you didn't. So they don't? And he was like, he kind of couldn't answer it. And I was
Right.
like, and it wasn't a satisfying answer for me as like a 9 or 10-year-old. And I was like, man, I guess if you're Catholic, you go to hell. And then I remember like kind of that coming onto like the schoolyard where you're like, I don't know, kids ask each other dumb shit all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, sorry, you're going to hell. And then as I got older, and also wars that we got into in our country got into that you end up having to sort of learn about in current events when you're in school, and you're sort of like, wait, so are all Muslim people going to hell? And once you start extrapolating on that level, you're like, if the answer is yes, this is crazy.
Right.
And if the
Well,
answer is no, then what are we all talking about?
Right. Right.
Hey.
The first time I was exposed really directly to religion, because I had been to churches and to church, my extended family up north where I was from is Anglican, which is like like Catholicism, but they hate Catholics anciently. So anyway, but I did not have any kind of like strong involvement with the church. Jesus to me was a cartoon character for Christmas specials. So just the same as like the Mighty Thor was a cartoon character for Marvel Comics, who also was said to be a divine son of a god, which like those wires can't help but get crossed for me when I'm a little kid. Anyway, we moved down south where I live now, and I went when I was about 7. I went to a 6, actually, I think, between the ages of 6 and 7. I went to a vacation Bible school, which is like a summer camp thing that happens down south.
I'm aware.
Okay, great. I don't know if it happens anywhere else, but Southern Baptists love it.
I was a frequent VBS kid.
So. Well, there you go. So I went to vacation Bible school because I was invited by one of my friends in my new neighborhood. And the first day of the little camp, we were out on the playground. They had a little like jungle gym thing at the church or whatever. It's just a little small kind of Southern Baptist church. We're out playing on the playground. And I say to my friend who's there, I said, let's play Ninja Turtles. And immediately the fucking vacation Bible school teacher, who was this stern man, came over and was like, no, if you pretend to be Ninja Turtles, that is taking a graven image and you will go to hell. That is a sin. You will go to hell for being a Ninja Turtle. And that was just like 6 years old. I was like, you're telling me I'm going to hell? First off, I barely know what that means, and that sounds bad. And also, for playing Ninja Turtles?
A good thing for me is that my parents were never as hell and brimstone, and the church that we went to wasn't as hell and brimstone. It was more like it was, in a way, I almost wish it was, because I think what their church was when I was growing up, they don't go to that church anymore. Kind of don't go to any church anymore, but
well, they have relationships with Jesus,
right? Which, yeah, but they were more love the sinner, hate the sin,
which is its own kind of fucked up in a way.
Oh yeah, and I was like, so like I don't know, like my mom's hairdresser is gay.
Yeah.
And I asked her about it once, and she was like, well, love the sinner, hate the sin. I was like, what?
What does that even mean?
You're casting judgment on this person, and I think that is also fucked up. Yeah. We've gone on a very sideways
long tangent here. But it's because this dialogue rang true to us in a way that got us to a deeper conversation, and it got us to a deeper thought. I don't think this started by talking about, being queer and that being a relationship you have
True.
with the church. I think in some ways this is more about grief and depression, like directly, of course, than I don't think Todd McFarlane's trying to do like that version of a decaying relationship with God. But
I
I
mean,
think it's
listen,
more about the feeling that many of us feel when we feel grief and that anger of like, why would you do this? Spawn grieving himself and grieving his own death and grieving the fact that he cannot go back to being what he was. He has to accept what he is. I think that's the lesson that's trying to be conveyed to him over and over. You can't go back to what you were. You have to accept what you are and move forward with that. I think that's something that, you know, in terms of transition, again, I think that's something that we have to look at and say, if I'm going to do this, I have to accept that I will not be what I was. I will be what I am.
yeah.
And there's grief in that too. I think that this is a strong metaphor for grief and for depression as a result. And as we're talking about that, a giant flesh worm made of Spawn's cape reaches out and swallows Cagliostro. I love this version, this look of like it's got its tentacle wrapped around him and he's all mad and his face is all darked out. And you can tell that he's like, yeah, go ahead, motherfucker.
Yeah, we're gonna fucking do
Swallow
this.
me.
Here we go.
It spits him out and he says some magic words. Love, love, love the lettering of the magic words. That's basically just like symbols and sigils.
Yeah, it's
I
cool.
love that it's not even like a take on like words, like nonsense words. It's just not even. I love the lettering there.
Yeah.
Common Orzakowski W.
I also Common Capullo W. Love the banana peel on his head.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Super fun.
So he says some magic words and it causes the costume to kind of retreat and de-escalate, and the whole like hellish flesh monstrosity that's become sort of totally de-emphasizes and like it disappears.
And we get some of the emotionality from Spawn then that we called out about Tremor also, right? When Tremor sees his brother and realizes his brother's alive, we get sad Tremor. We get a little sad, tired Spawn here.
His hands all like clutched up. He's like withering.
But his eyes, it's always his eyes, you know, and it works really, really well. He's not shedding a tear in the next panel where he says, "Help me, please." But the coloring does like a little bit of the glint on the side of his eye that almost kind of looks like echoes a tear. It works really well.
And I like this. He says, "Help me, please." And Cog says, "I've been trying, Al. Don't you understand? Why do you think I'm here? Because of you. My appearance here isn't an accident. Neither is yours. We need each other. So do our souls." And again, that rings true to someone as dialogue of someone reaching out to someone who is clearly in deep metaphysical and physical pain.
Spiritual.
It rings true as something that like someone desperately wanting to help someone in that space who is in that place would say. I like it. You know, as much as we said these are two of the Spawn issues of all time, we have just had one of the longest, deepest conversations we've ever had on this podcast about like our personal beliefs and our feelings and our emotions. And I think that the fact that a fucking Spawn comic can do that and make that happen for us is exactly why we're doing this podcast. Because even in a episode about two issues that aren't particularly special, there is something special in here. And I think that Todd McFarlane is driving at something deeper and more human than often we actually get to in these moments.
100%. We're going to check back in after Spawn has this sort of outburst and, you know, recovery. We're going to check back in with Terry at the neurologist, Dr. Rollins. And he says that everything seems to be in order.
They just have to check out this dark spot on his brain and the test will be back soon,
Yeah.
which is pretty bad. I also, honestly, I love Terry Fitzgerald on this page because he's thinking like,
the same thing we're all thinking every time that we go to the doctor, which is
he's like, why I don't need to be here. Well, he's like, first he's like, I don't need to be here. I'm fine. Then the doctor's all weird. And then he's like, I'm dying. It really, again, it rings true.
again, but also too, I like Terry's sort of sadness as well. There's a lot of palpable emotion in
There
this
is.
issue, and
There is.
we gotta tip our hat to the king, Greg Capullo,
That's
again.
right.
And I'll say this: Danny Miki doing a good impression of Todd's inks, because it looks great. I mean,
As the
it
issue goes on, Danny Miki's
smooths
inks start
out,
to really
really smooths out.
coalesce a lot better.
Yeah,
Honestly, King Spawn, King Capullo.
true.
Um, and we see that he's still lying to Wanda about this. She's phoning his office trying to get in touch with him, and his secretary is like, "Oh, he's in a meeting." Wanda's like, "He didn't say anything about a meeting," which I guess he tells her every single fucking thing about his life then.
Well, they probably have like a shared GCal.
Yeah, exactly. So then we have
Our favorite cyborg gorilla is back.
this is my favorite version of our favorite cyborg gorilla yet. Him crawling on which bridge is that? Is that the Brooklyn Bridge? I don't know. I can't recognize it from
If
this.
it is the Brooklyn Bridge, it's not a particularly good looking version of it.
No, it might be the George Washington Bridge. It's a bridge in New York, of which there are several.
Keep in mind, if it's the George Washington Bridge, that means he's coming from New Jersey, which I guess would make sense. It could be the Verrazano, but it doesn't really look like the Verrazano.
Him coming from New Jersey kind of makes sense, although he was kind of it doesn't matter.
Coming from the
it
south.
doesn't matter which bridge this is, because this is a bridge.
It's one of the bridges
York,
of all time.
One of the bridges of all time. And this is one of the Cygors of all time, but I like this drawing of it a lot better. It's more gorilla-like. The cybernetic parts are more absurd. He's got the chains. It says New York jungle, concrete jungle. Within the jungle now lurks the beast. Concrete jungle, wet dream tomato. We all know. Yeah, he's made a journey of nearly a month. For us, it's been a lot longer than that, broski. It's been like 3 or 4 months at this point. It's been a month or two since we even checked in with this ape. And it says it's one in particular whose blood he seeks. And it shows him standing on top of the thing yelling, "Simmons!" And if there was a giant cyborg ape standing on top of one of the bridges of New York like that, people would be like, in 2024, traffic would be stopped. People would be taking pictures.
That's very true.
Speaking of traffic, though, we catch back up with Terry as he's driving home. And unfortunately, he has another blackout behind the wheel. It says he is left in total darkness. This page, where it's all centered around him and the action is kind of drawn in that wheel shape.
It's really cool.
Where we see everybody crashing. There's like a big pile up. He swerves into traffic, and there's a big truck coming his way. This page of the crash, sublime. Honestly,
yeah, really cool.
The way the crash on the bottom, we're just seeing the very first moment of impact, like the absolute first second where they're touching, and it's too late. He wakes up just as he crashes into this semi truck. The huge crash lettering looks great. Honestly, very Daniel Warren Johnson.
100%. And DWJ, I think, sometimes does take a few cues from 90s comics.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think in the most loving way.
100%. Would love to talk to him about that. DWJ, if you listen to the podcast, which you don't, call us. Talk to us about Spawn. Man, if he did a Spawn comic,
that'd be so sick.
That'd
be so sick. So we catch back up with Sam and Twitch. Sam's big surprise earlier that was that in addition to getting them in office, he got them a beater ass car.
Yep.
They're ordering some big belly burgers with extra cheese, or belly busters with extra cheese. And as they're pulling away, there's a big bang from under the hood. Twitch pulls his gun immediately. He is a gangster with this shit. Sam is like, "No, it's just the car. It blew a rod or something." And, he says Twitch is... Oh, no, it's not the surprise. I guess that's not the surprise. Here's where he says he has a surprise coming. I thought he said it earlier. Listener, I jumbled things up. Sam, at the end of this, says he has a surprise. I'm thinking it's a new car, but we'll find out. Twitch is crying that he spent all his money on the office, and that's why he's so edgy. But we'll see what happens next. Sam says, "I have another surprise," and he pulls out a pair of keys, So that's what made me think it was the car.
Yeah, I think that shows up in the next issue, that
Yeah.
there's a replacement for this beater.
So at the end of this issue, we get one final page, and it is Wanda learning that Terry Fitzgerald has just been in a massive car accident. She leaves the phone hanging on the hook. They're calling, hello, hello, are you still there? As she presumably runs out of the house to get Cyan.
Yeah, we
and
know
go see
that Terry is at the hospital now. So good cliffhanger to end on.
Yes, indeed.
So that's going to bring us to some back matter. And I'll get into the Spawn 48 back matter first. There's some fun stuff. Obviously, the McFarlane Toys ads, a couple of fun pinups by Randy Queen and Joyce Chin that we have here.
Sure.
Oh, we got a Joyce Chin, Angela. Randy Queen. Kind of cool. Spawn.
Yeah. That's a very like Eastman and Laird-esque kind of Spawn to me.
Yeah, I like his hand. I like his fat fingers in his hand. So in the blah blah blah, which is Terry Fitzgerald's little column, mostly he just shares some photos from Toy Fair, and he shares a photo of a jet ski, a Spawn jet ski.
Oh hell yeah! How much is that selling for on Whatnot or whatever now?
I wonder, but and then he explains that if you want to make a one-off thing that has Spawn or Spawn logos on it, it's okay. But if you make two or more, they will sue you.
Okay.
So,
like if you're distributing even one extra one,
he says.
Well, the thing is, the problem with that is not only triples is best.
It's true, especially if it's Dan Flash's. He says if you use it as a one-time demonstration piece like Steve did on his jet ski, you're not breaking any laws. If you decide, however, to mass produce, which means two or more, any item featuring the character, artwork, and or logo, you will be in violation of several trademark and copyright laws. I know this probably makes us sound like the bad guys, but just like Coca-Cola, Ford, all of the sports teams, and especially Harley-Davidson, we have all spent tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars protecting and promoting our properties. So like the other companies mentioned, we do take copyright violations very seriously. Please feel free to play within the rules, though.
Asterisk, sports stars are fair game.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the
as long as he only uses their name like once.
Yeah, as long as there's only one Tony Twist in this comic. But also the stuff with, Angela and all that stuff. It's just very ironic.
It's all on the cusp of happening already.
Well, and I think that speaks to his inexperience, because for one thing, I think what is going on is partially that Todd thinks all those I's and T's are dotted and crossed, and he thinks he's given a couple $100,000 or a couple $1,000 here or there to the folks. He's got gentlemen's agreements, and that's fine for them. If you're some random asshole, you're going to get sued if you make another jet ski. But it's one of those things where it's so easy to see when something is being done against you.
Right.
And it can be hard to even see when you are also doing that same thing back, perhaps even unintentionally.
Yeah. So then in the spawning ground, first we get Richard S. McDonald's asking if in later issues we could see the appearance of another Hell Spawn to contend with our beloved Al Simmons in the Darkland streets of the Bowery. He also asks, can he replenish his power if he reaches 0? Because he can draw power from the creatures of the night. He says he's been underwhelmed with Cygor, and that the double shipping has been taxing on his budget. He also says that Todd's rendition of Spawn is his favorite, but Capullo has improved greatly since he began working on Spawn. He is by far my vote for second place, since you don't have the time to write, pencil, ink, and manage McFarlane Toys. When Spawn resumes monthly publication, though, I hope to see the art once again taken over by the two of you. So low key kind of dig at Tony Daniel and Kevin Conrad there, I think. But
at the same time, he's
whatever.
certainly feeling the same thing we're all feeling with it, which is the ebb and flow of like, and here's the Capullo issue, and here's the Capullo issue, and
Yeah.
here's the Capullo issue.
So Todd says, let's go back to the beginning of your letter, see if we can't answer some of your points. Oh, he does say at the very, very beginning, he says, what's the deal with like another black rose blooms in hell tonight? What is this? And he goes, the comment about the black rose blooming in hell was not in reference to a spawn, but the demons below have souls. That's it. That's all it was. Nothing deeper than that.
Yeah,
But you're right. It might be interesting when Spawn goes to hell if you were to run into Billy Kincaid or Chief Banks in some sort of dimension. I'll make note of this. Maybe I can work it into an issue somewhere between 50 and 53.
sure.
Then there's some
I got
stuff.
what the point was. I thought it was just a poetic way to say like, and now he fucking dead and in hell.
I think a thing that we are noticing with some of the letters, and I think that this is the thing that is true of comic book fans to this day, is sometimes things get taken way too literally when they are just artistic flights of fancy.
Yeah. You know, the Grant Morrison quote about kicking tires on the Batmobile kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't worry about it. I don't know. They go to the bathroom. You don't need to see it. They get the suit on. Who cares?
It's basically the modern day version is like, is there a lore reason he says it's a black rose? Like, is there a lore reason for him to wear blue jeans? Like, because people wear, I don't know, man.
Then Todd just kind of gets into a bunch of nonsense. Apparently, what he's kind of getting at in this letter is that Spawn looks so different across issues 41 to 43, and Todd's just like, I don't know, the suit's doing shit. It's a symbiote. It's replenishing itself. It changes. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
There's an 18-year-old who's an avid reader of the book, who it was instantly hooked by the magic. That's a direct quote. However, after reading issue 43, I have to wonder to myself, since the book began, Sam and Twitch have been more of a subplot, for lack of a better word. They're always part of the story, but they were never the story. You always have lots of Spawn action with a few pages devoted to Sam and Twitch. My point is that issue 43 had only a few pages that dealt with Spawn directly. Approximately 3/4 of the book was dedicated to Sam and Twitch and Chief Banks. I realize you want to quickly move their story along, but you went so slowly with it before, and that worked so well. This was an absolute shock. And Todd's just like, I don't know, man. Sometimes I'm going to do a Sam and Twitch issue to sort of get some shit out of the way. Get off my dick.
This guy's doing the speed run of our podcast in these letters here.
Yeah, I know. And the next guy asks, then there's some stuff where people are just asking if they can improve, like, maybe the freak should have psychic powers, and that's why he was able to do this. And like,
okay, maybe he should.
Yeah. Then somebody references Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Okay.
And Spawn's going to be running into Savage Dragon issue 52. So we'll get to that soon. And then one guy says that he hasn't read comics regularly since 1985, but in 1994 he wandered into a comic shop and his eyes literally popped out of his head. There were dozens of different titles by independent publishers, and the best part was you could order what you wanted in advance, a thing that you could do in 1985. So I don't know what this guy's really talking about.
You know, 1985 was right at the kind of start of the really big boom of comic stores, so maybe he wasn't really like in a place where you could really
I guess he's from Christiansburg, Virginia, so
I don't know.
He does say that he got into Spawn in 1994. His wife also likes it and thinks that Spawn is the best book on the stands, and that he rubbed her. What did he say? Oh my God, the way that he worded it. I got the chance in 1995 to go to the Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina. My wife was not able to go, so I had to rub it in that I got to meet Al Simmons, see the Spawn Mobile, and had the chance to meet you.
Wow.
So that's the first one. That's issue 48. In 49, Terry Fitzgerald just talks about hockey a lot in the blah blah blah. big Canucks fan.
Right.
And we get a little note before the spawning ground that says, next month we mark our 4th anniversary with the release of the special double-sized issue of Spawn number 50, featuring the return of Todd writing, penciling, inking one story, Greg Capullo and Danny Miki on the other. As an added bonus will be the unveiling of Spawn's new face. What a great package.
New maggot face Spawn.
Yeah, so this is going to be the beginning of a new era, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm honestly excited. I'm excited we're hitting number 50. I can't believe it's the next episode. We're honestly not that far from 50 episodes ourselves at this point. You know, not terribly far. We're on the other side of 25.
Yeah, we're this is about episode 30 or so, depending on when we can. It might be 29. It depends on when/if we can get the Spawn Wildcats issue. It's depending on our guest. So
fair enough. Well, long story short, I'm excited about it. I'm excited that we've gotten this far into Spawn. It'll be the end of the first volume of the Spawn Omnibus. So I've got the second one that's going to be coming off the shelf. I'm really, really pumped to crack another spine. You know, it's going to be interesting to have read 50 issues of Spawn and 50 issues of comics. You know, I'm excited. We'll get more into it then, but yeah. And as always, we get into this sometimes, and I mean it every time. Thank you so much to everybody who listens. You know, friends, family, whether we know you or don't, we really appreciate that you take the time to spend an hour or two a week with us as we talk about this weird, wild, often very wonderful and interesting comic.
Yeah, absolutely. To get into, before we kind of sign off, we do have a couple of solid letters.
Oh, yes.
In issue 49, Spawning Ground. One says, Dear Mr. Todd, I'm age 15. I've been collecting comics for 7 years.
Dear Mr. Todd.
I almost quit about 4 years ago because I got so sick of the same damn cheap storylines and yellow blood over at Marvel and the other Comics Code titles. I remember being in my local comic and card shop deciding over the new titles when something caught my eye. Image. I picked up copies of Spawn, Wildcat, Savage Dragon, Cyberforce, and Shadowhawk. Best $10 I ever spent in my life. I kept buying all the titles, including Pit, Max, Supreme, and others, until I lost interest in some after about a year. 2 years and 400 Image comics later, I decided I'd give up all the titles except Pit, Max, and Spawn. Well, after 6 months in Europe, I finally returned home 4 days ago. I went back to the comic shop and bought all the back issues I had missed. It's great to be back, but I have some complaints. Bi-weekly? What? Bi-weekly? Great. More Spawn, except please don't move too fast in the storyline. Don't introduce new villains every 2 issues for Spawn to fight, almost die, and then demolish, only to wind up 5 issues later. This kid really learning how
you know what? Don't worry
work.
about it, kid. He's not going to move too fast. It's not going to go too quick. It's all going to get a chance to breathe.
Number 2, please draw something. You're the main reason I collected all your previous stuff. Basically, you kick ass at drawing. I'm not the only one who wants you to draw something. Please do it, or I'll send in naked pictures of my grandma. Number 3.
What?
I think
that's the kind of shit that people would. That's some Wizard magazine humor right there.
He's just threatening Todd McFarlane in order to get what he wants. And then number 3, I remember when you first got started, you said you were never going to give your readers any gimmicks, no poofy covers, no miniseries, and no jacking up the price over $195. Todd, look at me. You're falling into the trap of the big profit macho marketing ideas. You started with apparel, then figures, now a board game and cards and spogs and Hollywood. What's next?
How old is this kid?
15.
Oh, God. This is the most insufferable kid in your high school.
What's next? Spawn subdivisions in LA? What happened to my sob independent just getting started Spawn? Besides these few problems, keep on trucking. P.S. The merchandise really does look great, though. Just watch out for Bionic Super GI Astronaut Mega Transforming Spawn in briefs, please. A Spawn Spongy, Jeff Johns. I'm kidding. Not Jeff Johns.
I almost had an aneurysm. Pierce, I almost lost my mind because, oh my God. for a split second, I knew it could not be Jeff Johns because that's far too young in
far too young, far too
1993.
young.
But oh my God.
Although only a couple years prior to this is when Jeff Johns did write into Superman and was like, I think you should
be Lex Luthor's son too.
And then he got to write Superboy and he was like,
I would love it if there was a comic where Superman and Lex Luthor were raising a son together.
Absolute Superman? Maybe that's what it is.
Superman's frenemy, Lex Luthor.
My Two Dads. And it's a Superboy book.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I'll write it.
Todd doesn't say anything super exciting there. There's some other people complaining about swearing.
Okay.
And Todd is just like, nothing's an insult. Like, and also somebody's saying that he's being sacrilegious. Oh, somebody says, I'm not naive, but as a Christian, I take offense to you taking the Lord's name in vain the way you do. Why isn't some characters saying Jesus every single issue? And he's just like, I don't know. They're just some of the words of all time. So
that's just what people talk like, bud. Sorry to hurt you.
It is what it is. Anyway.
There we go.
That's pretty much it. I mean, it's a lot of these are pretty standard, Todd. We had a couple of Angela is a constant pinup. This one's not as good, I think, as some of the past ones. And then we got a Spawn as well.
There we go.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, not too bad. All right. Well, I think that about covers it for Spawn's issues 48. Spawn's issues 48 and 49s. Spawn issue 48 and 49. You know, Pierce final. I was about you mother.
Beat you to it.
Just oh God. My final thoughts would be that there's some interesting stuff in here that triggers some surprisingly deep conversation for us, and for that, I will appreciate these issues. I think in terms of how they affect the plot of Spawn and where they actually move things for Al Simmons, they kind of barely do. It's really just, like I said, the off-ramp for 50. So, you know, even the issues that don't necessarily have the big storyline stuff can often have some level of interesting emotional impact. And that's why we read these comics, you know?
Yeah, we're crawling up to the climax that 50 is kind of promising. But again, it's no slight against Tony Daniel. I think he got a worse script to deal with than Capullo. Capullo got a lot more big moments. I kind of understand why that's the case. If I'm Todd, especially, like I want to give my main guy the good stuff, right?
You are my number one guy.
I got to give my main man. I've been reading a lot of Lobo comics lately. I will say, dear listener, buy the Lobo Compendium. It's really good. And you didn't realize that you love Lobo as much as you do because he's super fun. And it's great. It's just great comics, just great stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, these are 2 issues and they did get us into a bit of a deeper conversation in 49 than I thought they would, but I'm glad they did. That's the continual surprise of Spawn. So, George, I know you got to get to the movies, but where can people find you if you want them to find you?
You can read my writing every Hellspawn day at newsarama.com, whose opinions are not reflected in this podcast. And that's about it. You can check out my current musical project, Witch Crisis. It's on YouTube at Witch Crisis. And that's about it. How about you?
Hell yeah. Yeah, you can find me at PE Lightning or at lapsed.punk on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. I'm bad at using Blue Sky. I should use it more.
You shouldn't.
I know. It's all the same shit.
I wouldn't recommend it at this point.
But you can find the show at Spawnography Pod or at Spawnography in all those places. We're just not on Facebook because I don't have time for that shit. You can email us at spawnographypod@gmail.com. Please rate, review, subscribe on Spotify. You can leave comments on Spotify now. Please do that. We'll respond to them. If you send us an email, if you leave a review, we'll read it on the air.
Unless it's really mean.
If it's really mean, we will also read it on the air, and I'll be mad about it on the air, I guess. But maybe you'll never hear it because you're mean. I don't know.
I
But
don't know.
that's fine. Yeah, like I said, please rate, review, subscribe. It really helps the show. Also, congrats to, at the time of recording, congrats to Regarding Spawn for their 100th episode.
Hell yeah.
Please go check them out. They are homies. And we're two of the Spawn podcasts of all time. So
That's right.
Good to support the Spawn community.
The Spawn community. That's exactly right. It's
We're
short
gonna keep
for
trying to
Spawn
make
community.
We're gonna keep trying to make that happen. Anyway, George, for Todd so loved the world,
He gave his only begotten Spawn.
see you later, Hellspawn.
Spawn!